Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome into the show. You're watching the San Francisco 49ers Report. Chase Sr. here with you. Thanks for waking up here with us. And, of course, no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, thank you for making this early edition of the Niners Report a part of your day. It is Tuesday, April 29th, and for those of you watching on the West Coast, which is obviously a lot of you, even though this is a worldwide Niners show, you're probably looking at your phone, you're seeing that notification, and then you're popping us up here on YouTube. And it's very early for everybody out there because this news came forward in the early hours, regardless of where you are in America. The San Francisco 49ers and tight end George Kittle are in agreement on a historic contract extension. We're about to talk about that, what it means, what the dollar figures are, and this is a huge move for San Francisco, obviously, and we had an indication that it was coming a couple of weeks ago. It looked as though maybe things were far apart. There was that report last week from Diana Rossini who had said George Kittle wants to become the highest paid tight end in the National Football League, and the two sides were far apart on a deal. That's why he didn't show up to the early portion of OTAs, and then he refuted that. He responded and said, your sources are wrong. Well, about a week or so later, this deal does get done, and it gets done early, well ahead of training camp, and could this be a sign of things to come? Have the San Francisco 49ers finally changed their tune? This is an organization that historically has waited and waited and waited to get some of these contract extensions done, usually up until later in the offseason, right in the lead up to training camp. And then what happens? Oftentimes the market gets reset, and the Niners have had to pay more money to a lot of their players because they've waited as that market has gotten reset. But here we are on April 29th, and this deal is finalized. Be sure to hit that subscribe button whenever there's breaking news, and wherever I am, I have you covered right here on the 49ers Report. I saw my phone going wild as I woke up about 6:30 a.m. ready to get a workout in Central Time. And I was like, I got to get into the office right now. I have to record this show. So here we go. It is a 4-year, $76.4 million contract for the best all-around tight end in football. That comes out to $19.1 million per year. That number is very notable because, as we've discussed here on the show, Trey McBride of the Arizona Cardinals a few weeks ago had signed his deal and a contract extension for him going into year 4 that was worth $19 million per season, which became the highest paid mark for a tight end in average annual value, and he had gotten $40 million plus in guaranteed money. And so the Niners pay Kittle $19.1. He becomes the highest paid tight end in the National Football League, and he becomes the highest paid tight end in average annual value in NFL history. He also gets $40 million in total guaranteed cash, $35 million at signing, and $5 million in 2027. Smart for the Niners to get this deal done. Even though George Kittle is going to be 32 years old in October, he is still playing at an elite level. He's had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. He's the best Niners tight end ever. And it's important to keep special players like this in-house, keep special players like this under wraps and happy. Kittle was entering the final year of his contract, and I know the Niners have retooled their roster to a certain degree, and they've let a lot of other players go, and some of them very high-priced. Those players who they let go are not George Kittle. Now, because he's still the best all-around tight end in football, in my opinion, with his ability to block, his ability to pick up yards after the catch, great route runner, great weapon in between the 20s. And you get inside the 20, and he's a great red zone target. But you're also compensating Kittle for what he's done recently, what you think he can still do, of course, because obviously there's some risk here with the age, but he's an all-time Niner. And George Kittle deserves to only wear one jersey in his NFL career, the scarlet, red, and gold. And this will probably allow him to do that. For those of you concerned about the age, we have seen tight ends be able to age pretty gracefully throughout the course of NFL history. And there's been some talk about Kittle being injured a lot. Look, after he signed that contract extension going into the 2020 season, he missed a lot of time that year. But he's had a track record of staying pretty healthy throughout his career. And if you plan on giving Brock Purdy a contract extension, and it looks as though that might be the next deal that happens, it makes sense to sign Kittle to this extension so that you can have him paired up alongside Brock Purdy for the foreseeable future. Because he has been an unbelievable weapon, unbelievable teammate for Purdy. And he's going to continue to be a focal point of this offense, maybe even more so after the Niners traded away Deebo Samuel. And after you trade away Deebo Samuel, you would imagine that George Kittle becomes more of a focal point of the offense. And he's had this kinship, this on-field continuity and camaraderie, this sixth sense and great feel. And Purdy's been able to go to Kittle big moment after big moment, and they have connected for a lot of production and a lot of huge plays and a lot of huge performances in their 2+ seasons together. And that brings me to my next point, right? George Kittle broke out at the end of the 2022 season when Brock Purdy became the team's starting quarterback. He had 11 touchdowns that year. I'm pretty sure 7 or so came in the final 5 games of that year. It's something in that neighborhood, right? And then he comes back in 2023, and he has more than 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. And then this past year, 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns. So that is 25 touchdowns over the last 2.5 seasons for George Kittle, when Brock Purdy has mostly been the starting quarterback for the entirety of that time. And he had kind of that gap there after he had signed that extension, where he started his career with 515 yards as a rookie, nearly 1,400 in year 2, 5 touchdowns, 1,000 yards after that, 5 touchdowns during that 2019 Super Bowl year, where he had 3 consecutive years of under 1,000 yards. And here, the last 2 seasons, and then once Brock Purdy became the Niners' starting quarterback in 2022, when he replaced Garoppolo, who replaced Lance in that Miami game, that's when Kittle's production has just skyrocketed since then. So the reviving of his career has been coincided with Purdy. And going back to the games played, he played 15 as a rookie, 16 year 2, 14 year 3. He played the 8 that I mentioned in 2020. Outside of that, George Kittle has played in 14+ games every single year that he's been in the NFL outside of that 2020 season, and obviously such a unique athlete at 6'4", 250 pounds. And then going back to the point that I was making a little while ago about why it's important to keep Kittle with the Niners, what he means to this organization as far as being a leader, one of the faces of the franchise. He's part of the fabric of the Bay Area. He is the consummate pro. During his tenure, the Niners have won so many games, and he's been at the forefront of that. Him and Fred Warner are the heartbeats of this Niners organization. When you bring rookies in and they're wondering how to go about their NFL careers to start, and they're trying to feel out what it's like to be a pro, if you're the Niners, you tell those young players, you look at Fred Warner and you look at George Kittle for how you can model yourselves. And those types of things are very important. There's also this too. It's great for Kittle because he deserves to be the highest paid tight end in the NFL. The market has really reset in recent years. You think about how much of a bargain the tight end position is as compared to the wide receiver market. George Kittle becomes the highest paid tight end in the NFL at $20 million per year. There are wide receivers now making $40+ million per year. That's half. And so NFL general managers, NFL owners are hoping that the tight end market continues to be what it is right now and what it's been. A fraction of the price of what the wide receiver market is. Because forget just position, right? George Kittle can line up inline tight end. He can block for you. He can line up in the slot. He can line up out wide. He can line up anywhere. Forget the position and just focus on the production that he can give you, the player who he is, the impact that is felt when he's on the field. $20 million, he might be the highest paid tight end in the NFL, but it's a bargain compared to what wide receivers are making. Shoot, Brandon Ayuk's making 30. Who's the better player? Who's more impactful? Who's more meaningful? It's George Kittle. And so good for him to become the highest paid tight end in the NFL. But how about this? Him and Kyle Juszczyk, the longest tenured Niners. Juszczyk was signed in 2017 when Kyle Shanahan came over from Atlanta, and John Lynch as well. George Kittle was drafted. So Juszczyk has him beat, not by long. But he's going to join the Niners' 10-year club after the 2026 season and more than likely play his entire career with San Francisco. He also became one of 5 tight ends in league history to have 4 or more 1,000-yard receiving seasons, alongside Travis Kelce, who had 7, Rob Gronkowski, Tony Gonzalez, and Jason Witten, who had 4 each. And so he has an opportunity here to potentially catch Rob Gronkowski with those 7 1,000-yard seasons, and then he has the ability to has the option and the ability to overtake Travis Kelce, who had 7, and then overtake Rob Gronkowski, Tony Gonzalez, and Jason Witten 4 each. You know, we're talking about Hall of Fame players right there. And George Kittle is a future Hall of Fame player. And again, I think that he can continue to age pretty well. He's been pretty durable throughout his entire career. And again, tight ends in NFL history have been able to play and be impactful for a very long time. And I do think his game translates as well. 6-time Pro Bowler, a 5-time All-Pro selection. Special guy. Pro Bowler and a second-team All-Pro in 2018. Pro Bowler and a first-team All-Pro in 2019. Pro Bowler in 2021, even though he only had 910 yards. Pro Bowler, second-team All-Pro in 2022, even though he had 765 yards. First-team All-Pro in 2023. Pro Bowler and a second-team All-Pro last year. So even in the quote-unquote down years in which he wasn't coming close or was under 1,000 yards receiving, 910 in 2021, 765 in 2022, still a Pro Bowler and still an All-Pro that 2022 season. Because the tight end position is not strictly all about just receiving yards. It's also about blocking. It's also about helping the offense outside of just catching passes. But catching passes, I do think that part of the reason why the Niners are getting this deal done, the connection he has with Brock Purdy, but in trading away Deebo Samuel, it just makes sense to incorporate George Kittle more within this offense. You're also very unproven at wide receiver, right? You're relying a lot on Ricky Pearsall going into year 2. Juwan Jennings had a career year last year, contract year. You kind of know what you can get from him, but is he going to be able to duplicate that success of last year? Who knows? You're not sure when Brandon Ayuk is going to come back. Demarcus Robinson, solid signing, good number 3 or number 4, but he might get suspended because of that DUI for 3 games to start the year. Jacob Cowing. You drafted 2 rookie wide receivers. And so this Niners receiving room, unproven. Christian McCaffrey injured a lot last year. There are some questions with your running game. The mainstay, the consistent, who you can count on, is George Kittle linking up with Brock Purdy. And a congratulations to George Kittle's agent, Jack Becta. I've exchanged some messages with him from time to time. He gets this deal done, and I'm glad they get it done early. You get rid of and don't have to worry about this contract drama, a saga, a holdout. You get it done early. Kittle's going to be there for offseason activities. He's going to be there for training camp and the preseason. Hopefully the Brock Purdy contract follows suit, because then you get your key offensive players in there for training camp to start getting those reps in, working on a rhythm, working on being on the same page, which is what this Niners offense missed drastically last year, which is why it resulted in a hard-to-season watch offensively. And that's why they were so clunky. So 4-year, $76.4 million deal for Kittle, $19.1 million per year, $40 million total guaranteed. So pretty much a 2-year, $40 million deal, $20 million per, if you needed to move on after 2026. And we'll see, the extension might kick in following this year. We'll have to see on that. $35 million at signing, $5 million in 2027. Congratulations to Kittle. Glad the Niners got this deal done. And George Kittle, a fan favorite, staying in the Bay. It's going to make a lot of Niners fans happy as you wake up on this Tuesday, April 29th.